My sister-in-law kept accidentally endangering my newborn. The baby monitor crackled to life at 2:47 a.m., and what I heard made my blood turn to ice. Oops. Sorry, little guy, Auntie Melissa didn't see that step there. I was out of bed and down the hallway before my husband Jake could even process what was happening. Our 3-month-old son Oliver was crying, not his usual fussy cry, but sharp, panicked wails that cut straight through me. I found Melissa at the bottom of our 3-step entryway, bouncing Oliver awkwardly while his car seat lay sideways on the floor beside her. What happened? I demanded, reaching for my son. Oh hey, Sarah. Nothing major, I was just bringing him back from our little midnight drive. He was being fussy, and I thought maybe some fresh air would help. Melissa smiled that bright, oblivious smile that had been grating on my nerves for weeks. I guess I forgot about those steps in the dark. Good thing I was holding him. My hand shook as I took Oliver, checking him over frantically. No obvious injuries, but he was trembling. Melissa, it's almost 3 in the morning. You took my baby outside without asking? You looked so tired at dinner. I was just trying to help. Mom always said night drives worked wonders with us kids. She bent to retrieve the car seat, and my stomach dropped when I saw the chest clip was still at his belly level, completely wrong for a newborn. If they'd been in an accident. The car seat wasn't installed correctly, I said, my voice barely controlled. What do you mean? I buckled him in just fine. Jake appeared behind me, hair sticking up, squinting in the hallway light. Mel? What's going on? Your sister took Oliver for a drive without permission, nearly fell down the stairs coming back in, and look, I pointed at the dangling straps. The chest clip should be at armpit level for a newborn. This could have seriously hurt him if you'd crashed. Melissa rolled her eyes. Sarah, you're being paranoid. I've been babysitting since I was 12. I know what I'm doing. Babysitting teenagers is different from handling a 3-month-old. Okay, Jake intervened, running a hand through his hair. Let's all just calm down. Mel, maybe next time ask before taking him anywhere? And Sarah, I'm sure she didn't mean. This isn't the first time, I interrupted, my voice rising. Oliver startled in my arms, and I forced myself to lower it. Last week she put him down for a nap on the couch instead of his crib. On his stomach. I found him face down in the cushions. That's how we always slept as babies, Melissa protested. We turned out fine. The back sleeping guidelines exist for a reason. And 2 days ago, you tried to give him a piece of your apple to see if he'd like it. He's 3 months old, Melissa. He could have choked. Jake shifted uncomfortably. Maybe you're being a little. A little what? I turned to face my husband. A little protective of our infant son? I was going to say intense. Mel's just trying to bond with him. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Even Jake thought I was overreacting. I looked between them, my careless sister-in-law who treated my baby like a toy, and my husband who prioritized keeping peace with his family over our son's safety. I'm going to feed Oliver, I said quietly. Melissa, you should head home. It's late. As I walked toward the nursery, I heard Melissa whisper to Jake, first time mom nerves, right? She'll chill out eventually. No, I thought, settling into the nursing chair with my still trembling baby. I won't. The next morning, I called my mom while Oliver napped, desperate for someone to validate that I wasn't losing my mind. Honey, she sounds well-meaning but clueless, Mom said after I recounted the midnight incident. Trust your instincts. You know your baby better than anyone. Those words carried me through the rest of the week, until Sunday dinner at Jake's parents' house. I'd been dreading it since the stair incident, but Jake insisted we needed to smooth things over with Melissa. The Hendersons' dining room buzzed with conversation as extended family gathered around the massive oak table. Jake's mom, Patricia, had gone all out as usual, roast beef, Yorkshire pudding, the works. I sat between Jake and his cousin David, Oliver sleeping peacefully in his carrier beside my chair. Sarah's become quite the helicopter parent, Melissa announced halfway through dinner, loud enough for everyone to hear. You should have seen her the other night. I took Oliver for a tiny drive to help him sleep, and she acted like I'd kidnapped him. Heat crept up my neck. That's not what. She's micromanaging everything, Melissa continued, cutting into her roast beef. Last week she freaked out because I let him nap on the couch. This week it's the car seat positioning. Next week she'll probably ban me from holding him. Nervous laughter rippled around the table. Patricia reached over to pat my hand. First babies are overwhelming, dear. We all understand. I remember when Jake was born, his father Frank chimed in. Patricia wouldn't let my mother change a diaper without supervision for the first month. More chuckles. I felt like a specimen under a microscope, with everyone examining my supposedly irrational behavior. Even David's wife Emma was nodding sympathetically, as if I were suffering from some diagnosable condition. The thing is, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart, safe sleep guidelines exist because babies die from SIDS when placed on their stomachs. Car seat chest clips at the wrong position can cause internal injuries and crashes. These aren't preferences, they're safety requirements. Oh, come on, Melissa said, waving her fork dismissively. We all survived childhood without all these rules. Remember when we used to ride in the back of Uncle Ray's pickup truck? No seat belts, no helmets. And some kids didn't survive, I interrupted. That's literally why the safety standards changed. An uncomfortable silence settled over the table. Jake squeezed my knee under the tablecloth, whether in support or warning, I couldn't tell. Sarah, Patricia said gently, we know you want to protect Oliver. But Melissa loves him too. Maybe you could, ease up just a little? Let her learn her own way with babies? Learn on my 3-month-old? The words came out sharper than I intended. Oliver stirred at the sound, making soft mewling noises. See? Melissa gestured toward the carrier. He's not even upset. Babies are more resilient than you think. Frank raised his wine glass. To family, he said firmly, clearly trying to change the subject. And to learning patience with each other. Everyone lifted their glasses except me. I stared down at my untouched plate, realizing with crystal clarity that I was alone in this. They'd already decided I was the problem, the uptight new mom who couldn't appreciate her caring sister-in-law's help. As conversations resumed around me, I made a mental note to start keeping a detailed record of every interaction between Melissa and Oliver. If no one would listen to my concerns, maybe they'd listen to documentation. I just hoped I'd have enough evidence before something truly terrible happened. The documentation started the very next day. Monday, March 15th, 2:30 p.m. Melissa arrived unannounced while I was doing laundry. Found her feeding Oliver water from a bottle she'd prepared herself. When confronted, said he looked thirsty and didn't understand why breast milk and formula were the only appropriate liquids for a 3-month-old. Had to explain kidney damage risks, I kept the log in my phone, timestamping everything. Jake thought I was being ridiculous when he caught me typing after the water incident. You're actually documenting conversations with my sister? That's intense, Sarah. Someone needs to, I replied, not looking up from my screen. Since apparently I'm the only one who remembers these things happening. Tuesday, March 16th, 11:45 a.m. Melissa offered to watch Oliver while I showered. Agreed reluctantly. Came downstairs to find her holding him face out while cooking scrambled eggs on the stove. Hot oil was spattering. When I pointed out the danger, she said she was being careful and that Oliver likes watching her cook. Wednesday, March 17th, 4:20 p.m. Melissa changed Oliver's diaper, used baby powder despite my explanation that pediatricians no longer recommend it due to inhalation risks. She said her friend Jenny uses it on her kids just fine. By Thursday, I was exhausted from constant vigilance. Every time Melissa visited, which was nearly daily now that she'd been laid off from her retail job, I found myself hovering, waiting for the next safety violation. Jake accused me of making her feel unwelcome. She's trying to help, Sarah. Mom asked her to check on you during the day since I'm at work. I didn't ask for help. And I certainly didn't ask for someone who ignores basic safety guidelines. Maybe if you actually told her what you wanted instead of just criticizing. I have told her. Multiple times. She doesn't listen. That's when Jake said the words that made something crack inside my chest. Maybe you're not explaining things clearly enough. Friday, March 19th, 1:15 p.m. Major incident. Melissa arrived while Oliver was napping upstairs. She went to check on him and I heard the bathroom faucet running. Found her attempting to give him a bath in the sink without asking permission, using adult body wash instead of baby soap. Water temperature felt too hot. She said he smelled like spit up and thought I'd appreciate coming home to a clean baby. Had to explain newborn skin sensitivity and proper bath procedures. I called Jake immediately after that one, hands shaking as I held a very upset Oliver. She tried to bathe him, Jake. Without asking. With the wrong soap and water that was too hot. Did she hurt him? That's not the point. She could have scalded him, but did she actually hurt him? The question hung in the air like a challenge. No, Oliver wasn't physically harmed. But the near misses were accumulating, and I felt like I was screaming into a void. That evening, Melissa called Jake to complain about my hostile attitude. She basically ripped Oliver out of my hands, I heard her say through the phone. I was just trying to help, and she treated me like some kind of child abuser. Jake glanced at me while she spoke, his expression unreadable. I'll talk to her, he said into the phone. Talk to me about what? I asked when he hung up. Mel thinks maybe you need to see someone. About anxiety. She's worried this is getting out of hand. I stared at my husband, the man who'd promised to protect our family, and realized Melissa had successfully reframed the narrative. Now I wasn't a concerned mother, I was a mentally unstable woman who needed professional help. What do you think? I asked quietly. Jake hesitated for just a moment too long. I think, maybe it wouldn't hurt to talk to someone. That night, I expanded my documentation to include Jake's responses to each incident. If Melissa wanted to play games, I'd make sure I had every piece of evidence ready when this all inevitably came to a head. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, Jake's grandmother Rose. At 93, Rose Henderson had seen 4 generations of babies come through the family, and she had a reputation for speaking her mind regardless of whose feelings got hurt. When she arrived for her monthly visit on Saturday morning, I was breastfeeding Oliver in the living room while Melissa folded laundry nearby, another helpful gesture that mostly involved her refolding everything I'd already done. Hand me that baby when you're finished, Rose commanded, settling into her favorite armchair with a grunt. These old arms don't get enough grandbaby time. I'd always loved Jake's grandmother. She had sharp blue eyes that missed nothing and zero tolerance for nonsense. As I transferred Oliver to her experienced arms, I felt some of my constant tension ease for the first time in weeks. Look at you, little man, Rose cooed, adjusting his position with practiced ease. Growing like a weed, aren't you? Melissa looked up from the laundry basket. Grandma Rose, you should see how paranoid Sarah gets about everything. Yesterday she practically had a meltdown because I wanted to give him a bath. Rose's eyes sharpened. What kind of bath? Just a quick wash in the sink. He was all spit uppy, and I thought. In the kitchen sink? Rose's voice had gone dangerously quiet. With what soap? Some body wash from the bathroom. Sarah acted like I was trying to poison him or something. The silence that followed was deafening. Rose's weathered hands tightened protectively around Oliver as she fixed Melissa with a stare that could have frozen fire. Melissa and Henderson, she said, using the tone that had terrified Jake and his siblings as children. Are you telling me you tried to bathe a 3-month-old infant in a kitchen sink with adult soap? It wasn't a big deal, Grandma. Sarah just what? Sarah just tried to prevent you from giving her baby chemical burns? Rose's voice rose with each word. Do you have any idea what adult body wash can do to newborn skin? Or what could happen if you slip while holding a wet baby over a hard porcelain sink? Melissa's face flushed red. Everyone's being so dramatic. I was being careful. Careful? Rose shifted Oliver higher against her shoulder. When Patricia was born in 1952, we used harsh soaps because we didn't know better. 3 babies on our street ended up with severe rashes that summer. 1 got infected and nearly died. That's why they make special baby products now, because careful isn't enough when you're dealing with someone this small. I felt tears prick my eyes. Finally, someone understood. And another thing, Rose continued, her gaze never leaving Melissa's face. I heard about your midnight joyride with this little one. Taking a 3-month-old out without his parents' permission? In a car seat you didn't know how to secure properly? In my day, that would have gotten you banned from visiting until the child was old enough to protect himself. Grandma Rose, I was just trying to help. Help? Rose's laugh was sharp. You want to help? Learn to follow the mother's rules. This is Sarah's baby, not your practice doll. Melissa's mouth opened and closed like a fish. But Jake said. I don't care what Jake said. Jake didn't carry this baby for 9 months or push him out of his body. Sarah did. That makes her the expert on what's safe for her child. The front door opened and Jake walked in, stopping short when he saw the tension in the room. Hey Grandma Rose, how's? Jacob, Rose interrupted, sit down. We need to have a conversation. Jake's face went pale. Nobody disobeyed when Grandma Rose used that tone. Your wife has been trying to protect your son from dangerous situations, and instead of supporting her, you've been making her feel crazy. That stops now. Grandma, I think you're missing some context. The context is that your sister nearly scalded your child yesterday, and your response was to suggest your wife needs therapy. Rose's words hit like bullets. Your wife who has been keeping detailed records of safety violations because no one in this family was listening to her concerns. Jake's eyes darted to me. You told her about the documentation? I didn't have to tell her anything, Rose said before I could answer. I can see it in Sarah's face. The exhaustion, the constant worry, the feeling like she's fighting this battle alone. I've seen it before, in mothers whose children are in danger and no one believes them. She stood carefully, still cradling Oliver, and walked over to where I sat. Here's what's going to happen, she announced. Melissa doesn't get unsupervised time with this baby until she takes an infant safety course. And Jacob, you're going to apologize to your wife and start acting like her partner instead of her opponent. The room fell silent except for Oliver's soft breathing. Finally, someone with authority had heard me. But as I looked at Jake's stunned face and Melissa's angry tears, I realized this was just the beginning of a much bigger fight. The fragile peace Grandma Rose had established lasted exactly 4 days. On Wednesday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from Patricia, *emergency family meeting tonight at 7. Please bring Oliver, *. My stomach dropped. Jake was still at work, and something about the formal tone made my skin crawl. I called him immediately. Did you know about this meeting? Mom mentioned wanting to clear the air, Jake said, and I could hear him typing in the background. I think Melissa's been pretty upset since Grandma Rose's visit. Upset about what? Being told not to endanger our baby? Sarah, please. Can we just go and try to work this out as a family? That evening, I walked into the Henderson living room carrying Oliver's diaper bag like armor. The entire extended family was there, Patricia and Frank, Melissa, Jake's Uncle Ray and Aunt Linda, even Cousin David and his wife Emma. The only person notably absent was Grandma Rose. Where's Rose? I asked, settling into the furthest chair from Melissa. Grandma's not feeling well tonight, Patricia said, avoiding eye contact. Just a little tired. Jake shot me a look that clearly said don't push it, but I knew Rose hadn't been invited. This was a carefully orchestrated intervention, and they'd removed the one person who might take my side. Frank cleared his throat. We wanted to talk about the tension that's been building around Oliver's care. We're all family here, Patricia added, her voice syrupy with forced warmth. And family should be able to work through disagreements. Melissa sat on the couch, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. She'd obviously been crying, and I realized with sinking certainty that she'd gotten to them first with her version of events. I just don't understand what I did wrong, she said, her voice trembling. I love Oliver so much, and I've been trying so hard to help Sarah adjust to being a mom. But nothing I do is right. Emma leaned forward sympathetically. Sarah, we know the first few months are overwhelming. Maybe Melissa's approach isn't exactly what you're used to, but her heart is in the right place. This isn't about different approaches, I said, adjusting Oliver on my lap. It's about basic safety. But that's just it, David interrupted. What you call safety concerns, the rest of us remember as normal childhood experiences. We all survived riding in cars without perfect car seat positioning. We all took baths in kitchen sinks as babies. My face burned. Survival bias isn't a parenting strategy, David. Just because previous generations got lucky doesn't mean we should ignore current safety standards. See, this is what I mean, Melissa said, fresh tears spilling over. Everything I do gets turned into some kind of life or death situation. Last week I suggested maybe Oliver would like to try a tiny taste of mashed banana, and Sarah acted like I was trying to poison him. That wasn't what happened. She tried to give him a chunk of raw banana, and when I explained that babies his age couldn't handle solid foods yet, she'd rolled her eyes and said modern parents were too uptight. But looking around the room at their nodding faces, I realized the truth didn't matter. Melissa had already established the narrative. I think, Frank said carefully, that we might all benefit from some compromise. Sarah, maybe you could be a bit more flexible about letting Melissa bond with Oliver. And Melissa, maybe you could ask before trying new things with the baby. I have asked, I said, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. I've explained the safety guidelines multiple times. She ignores them. That's not true. Melissa protested. You never give me a chance to learn. You hover constantly and criticize everything. Jake, who'd been silent this entire time, finally spoke. Maybe Mom's right about compromise. Sarah, I know you're protective, but Melissa really is trying. Trying to what? See how many ways she can endanger our son before something terrible happens? The words hung in the air like a bomb. Patricia's face went white. Sarah, she said quietly, that's a horrible thing to say about someone who loves Oliver. Looking around at their shocked expressions, I realized I just played directly into their hands. Now I wasn't just an overprotective mother, I was cruel and paranoid, accusing sweet Melissa of deliberately harming a baby. I gathered Oliver's things with shaking hands. I think we should go home. But as we drove away, I knew this was far from over. And next time, they wouldn't let Grandma Rose anywhere near the conversation. The breaking point came 3 days after the family meeting, on a Saturday morning that started deceptively peaceful. Jake had taken Oliver to the grocery store, giving me my first solo hour in weeks. I was folding laundry in our bedroom when I heard the front door open downstairs. Sarah? I brought coffee. Melissa's voice echoed up the stairwell. My stomach clenched. Jake must have given her our spare key during one of their private conversations about my anxiety issues. I came downstairs to find her setting up a coffee service on our kitchen island like she lived here. Where's my little nephew? She asked brightly, pulling pastries from a white bakery box. With Jake at the store. I kept my voice neutral, mentally calculating how long they'd been gone. 20 minutes, maybe 30 until they returned. Perfect. That gives us time to talk. Melissa poured coffee into 2 mugs, adding cream to both without asking how I liked mine. I've been thinking about what everyone said at Mom and Dad's, and I have an idea. She pulled out her phone and opened what looked like a scheduling app. What if we set up regular auntie days? Like, every Tuesday and Thursday, I come over and help with Oliver for a few hours. That way you get a break, I get bonding time, and we can work together on finding a rhythm that makes you comfortable. The coffee tasted bitter in my mouth. Melissa, I appreciate the thought, but... I even signed up for an online baby care course. She showed me her phone screen, displaying a certificate from something called Modern Childcare Basics. The completion date was yesterday. See? I'm taking this seriously. I scrolled through the course description. It was a 30-minute quiz about general childcare, not the infant safety course Grandma Rose had suggested. But Melissa was beaming like she'd earned a degree in pediatric nursing. This is good, I said carefully, but Oliver's still too young for a lot of regular childcare situations. His schedule is pretty unpredictable, Anne. That's exactly why you need help. Melissa interrupted. Sarah, you look exhausted. When's the last time you took a real shower? Or went to lunch with a friend? I could watch Oliver every Tuesday while you do something just for yourself. The offer was tempting in a way that scared me. I was exhausted, and the isolation of new motherhood felt suffocating some days. But the thought of leaving Oliver alone with Melissa made my chest tight. Let me think about it, I said. Of course. No pressure. She sipped her coffee, then pulled out a small gift bag. I actually brought something for Oliver. A little early Easter present. Inside was a stuffed bunny with long, floppy ears and a ribbon around its neck. Adorable, but completely inappropriate for a 3-month-old. The ribbon was a strangulation hazard, the ears could pose a suffocation risk, and the button eyes could be choking hazards if they came loose. It's cute, I said, setting it aside, but probably better for when he's older. Melissa's face fell. What's wrong with it now? I explained about the safety concerns, watching her expression shift from disappointment to irritation to something harder to read. Sarah, it's a baby toy. From a reputable store. The package said suitable for ages 0 to 2. I turned the bunny over, looking for tags. Sure enough, there was a small label that said ages 3+ months in tiny print, but right below it was a warning about removing all ribbons and checking for loose parts before giving to infants. See this warning text? I pointed it out. You have to modify it first. This is exactly what I'm talking about, Melissa said, her voice rising. You find problems with everything. It's a stuffed animal, not a weapon. Small parts are literally the leading cause of infant choking deaths. And overprotective parenting is the leading cause of anxious children. We stared at each other across the kitchen island. The coffee had gone cold, and I could hear Jake's car pulling into the driveway. I should probably go, Melissa said, gathering her things. But think about the Tuesday arrangement, okay? Jake thinks it would be really good for all of us. As she left, passing Jake and Oliver on the front walkway, I realized she'd been setting up more than just a coffee date. This whole visit had been a test run for unsupervised visits, complete with Jake's apparent approval and a gift that would have given her ammunition if I'd let Oliver play with it safely. I added everything to my documentation, including the timestamp of her key use and Jake's involvement in planning her visit. Because I was starting to understand that this wasn't just about childcare differences anymore. This was about control, and I was losing ground fast. The first auntie day happened without my consent. I came home from my 6-week postpartum checkup on Tuesday afternoon to find Jake's car in the driveway and Melissa's Honda parked behind it. My heart rate spiked as I hurried to the front door, keys fumbling in my hands. I found them in the living room, Jake holding Oliver while Melissa sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by what looked like an entire baby store's worth of new purchases. Surprise! Melissa beamed, holding up a tiny outfit. I got him some spring clothes. And look, she gestured to a bouncy seat, a play mat with dangling toys, and several bottles. I thought we could start getting him used to taking bottles so you could have more freedom. Jake looked guilty but excited. Mel texted that she was coming over to start the Tuesday routine we talked about. I figured since I was working from home anyway. We talked about me thinking about it, I said carefully, setting down my purse. I didn't agree to anything. But your appointment was perfect timing. Melissa stood up, brushing off her jeans. How did it go? Are you cleared for normal activities? The question felt loaded. I'd been medically cleared for exercise, driving longer distances, and yes, leaving Oliver for extended periods. But medical clearance didn't equal emotional readiness, something I couldn't explain without sounding unstable. It went fine, I said, reaching for Oliver. Jake handed him over, and I immediately felt my shoulders relax. What's all this? Just some things I thought he might enjoy. Melissa picked up the bouncy seat. This one has 15 different songs and vibration patterns. And the playmat is supposed to help with tummy time. I examined the bouncy seat, noting that the weight limit started at 4 months, not 3. The playmat had small detachable parts that could easily become choking hazards. The bottles were the wrong flow rate for a breastfed baby his age. Tuesday, March 23rd, 3:45 p.m. ***. Melissa purchased baby items without consultation. Bouncy seat exceeds current weight guidelines. Playmat has detachable small parts. Bottle nipples inappropriate flow rate. Jake present and supportive of her purchases ***. These are really thoughtful, I said aloud, but I think some might be better when he's a little bigger. Melissa's smile tightened. The sales associate said they were perfect for his age. Sales associates don't always know the specifics of individual babies. Sarah. Jake's voice held a warning tone. Melissa drove all the way to 3 different stores to find things Oliver would like. The implicit message was clear: be grateful, stop nitpicking, don't embarrass the family again. Why don't I make us some lunch? Melissa suggested. And maybe Oliver could try a bottle? I pumped some of your frozen milk from the freezer. My blood went cold. You used my breast milk? Just a small bag from the back of the freezer. I wanted to see if he'd take a bottle from me. You know, for future babysitting. She held up one of the new bottles, filled with what looked like several ounces of precious liquid gold I'd pumped and stored for emergencies. The nipple was completely wrong, designed for older babies who could handle faster flow. Melissa, that's a fast flow nipple. He could choke, or get overwhelmed and develop bottle aversion, or... It's just milk, Sarah. Jake's voice was tired. Your milk. She's not trying to poison him. But it wasn't just milk. It was hours of pumping sessions, carefully stored and labeled. It was my backup plan for emergencies, my insurance policy against supply issues. And she'd casually thought it without asking, put it in an inappropriate bottle, and now Oliver would either struggle to drink it or I'd have to throw it away. Did he drink any of it? I asked. We were waiting for you to get home, Melissa said, but something in her expression made me suspicious. I looked more closely at the bottle. The milk level seemed lower than a standard pumping session would produce, and there were water droplets on the outside like it had been warmed and cooled. Melissa. My voice was deadly quiet. Did you already try to feed him? Just a tiny bit. He seemed hungry, and I thought. What happened? He spit up a little more than usual. And he got fussy. But babies do that, right? I stared at her, then at Jake, who was suddenly very interested in his phone. They'd fed my baby from an inappropriate bottle, he'd likely choked or been overwhelmed by the flow rate, and they'd both decided not to tell me. I'm done, I said quietly. Done with what? Jake asked. Done pretending this is about helping me. I looked between them. Melissa, you need to leave. And Jake, we need to talk. Alone. As Melissa gathered her purchases with wounded dignity, shooting Jake looks that clearly said your wife is impossible, I realized we'd crossed a line we couldn't uncross. The battle for my son's safety had just become a war. The confrontation with Jake that evening was unlike anything we'd ever experienced in our 3 years of marriage. I waited until Oliver was down for the night, then found my husband in our home office, laptop open, pretending to work. We need to talk about what happened today, I said, closing the door behind me. Jake didn't look up from his screen. Sarah, I really don't want to rehash this again. Melissa was trying to help, you got upset, she left. Can we please just move on? Move on? I sat down across from his desk. Jake, she fed our son from an inappropriate bottle without telling me, used my pumped milk without permission, and when he had a bad reaction, you both decided to hide it from me. We didn't hide anything. We were going to tell you. When? After I figured it out myself? My voice cracked. I'm his mother. I have a right to know immediately if something goes wrong. Jake finally looked at me, and what I saw in his face made my stomach drop. Resignation. Like he was humoring an unreasonable child. Baby spit up, Sarah. It's not a medical emergency every time Oliver has a normal baby reaction. Normal babies don't spit up excessively from bottles when they're exclusively breastfed. That was likely nipple confusion or flow rate overwhelm, which can lead to feeding aversion. I pulled out my phone. I documented everything. The wrong nipple type, the timing, the amount of milk wasted. You documented it? Jake's voice went flat. You're actually keeping records of my sister making mistakes? I'm keeping records of unsafe practices that everyone else seems determined to ignore. He closed his laptop and leaned back in his chair. Sarah, do you hear yourself right now? You're talking about my sister like she's some kind of threat. She loves Oliver. She's not trying to hurt him. Intent doesn't matter if the outcome is dangerous. Listen to yourself. Jake stood up, starting to pace. You're using words like unsafe practices and documentation. You sound like a social worker investigating a neglect case. The comparison hit me like a slap. Maybe because I feel like I need to protect my son from people who won't listen when I explain basic safety requirements. Your son? Jake stopped pacing. He's our son, Sarah. And that includes my family having a relationship with him. Not at the expense of his safety. According to whose definition of safety? Yours? Because everyone else in my family managed to raise healthy children without following every single guideline to the letter. I felt tears starting, but pushed them back. Jake, I found a text thread on Melissa's phone yesterday. His face went pale. What do you mean you found it? She left her phone on our kitchen counter while using the bathroom. It was open to a group chat with Patricia and Linda. I pulled up the screenshots I'd taken. Want to know what they're saying about me? Jake's jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. I read from my phone. Linda wrote, poor Jake is caught in the middle of Sarah's postpartum anxiety. Maybe we should suggest counseling? Patricia responded, I'm worried she's going to isolate Oliver from all of us if this continues. And Melissa wrote, I've been researching postpartum depression. Sarah checks a lot of boxes. We might need an intervention. The silence stretched between us like a canyon. They're building a case, Jake. Documenting my unstable behavior, the same way I'm documenting safety violations. The difference is, they're planning to use their documentation to question my fitness as a mother. Jake sank back into his chair. They're just worried about you. About us. Are you? I asked quietly. Are you worried about my mental health? Do you think I'm an unfit mother? The pause before he answered told me everything I needed to know. I think you're scared, he said finally. And I think that fear is making you see threats everywhere, even in people who love Oliver. I stood up, my legs shaky. The next time your sister wants to see Oliver, I'll be present for every minute. No more unsupervised visits. No more surprise drop-ins. No more using our house key without explicit permission. Sarah, that's not reasonable. It's not negotiable. I opened the office door. And Jake? Next time you want to discuss my mental health with your family, maybe include me in the conversation. As I walked toward our bedroom, I heard him call my name, but I didn't turn around. I had phone calls to make, starting with Grandma Rose, who I suspected had no idea what was being planned behind her back. Because if they wanted to play the documentation game, I was about to show them what real evidence looked like. The call with Grandma Rose that night changed everything. They'd been having meetings without me? Rose's voice was sharp despite the late hour. Planning what, exactly? I sat in my car in our driveway, having snuck out after Jake fell asleep. Oliver was safe in his crib with the monitor app connected to my phone, but I needed privacy for this conversation. Patricia mentioned something about a coordinated approach to helping me through my adjustment period, I said, reading from the screenshots. Linda suggested they should all document instances of what she called concerning maternal behavior. The silence on Rose's end lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. Rose? Are you there? I'm here, honey. I'm just... Her voice cracked. I'm remembering something that happened in 1987. With Jake's cousin Michelle. My stomach dropped. What happened? Michelle had postpartum depression after her second baby. Real depression, she couldn't get out of bed, wasn't eating, had intrusive thoughts about harming herself. Patricia convinced the family that Michelle was unfit, that the baby would be safer with relatives until she got help. They built a case using family court. Did they get custody? Temporarily. And it nearly destroyed Michelle. She lost 6 months with her daughter over what turned out to be a treatable hormone imbalance. Patricia never forgave herself, or so she claimed. Rose's breathing was labored. But she learned something from that experience, Sarah. She learned how to build a case. The pieces clicked into place with terrifying clarity. The family meetings I wasn't invited to. The careful documentation of my overreactions. Melissa's sudden interest in childcare courses and regular visits. Jake's growing distance and concern about my anxiety. They're not just worried about my mental health, I whispered. They're building a custody case. I think you might be right. And Sarah? I need you to know that what you've been documenting about Melissa's behavior, that's not paranoia. That's good parenting. Tears started flowing before I could stop them. Jake thinks I'm losing my mind. Jake's been manipulated by experts. Patricia's had 40 years to perfect her guilt trips and emotional manipulation. But here's what she doesn't know, I've been keeping my own documentation. What do you mean? Every family meeting she's called in the past month, every conversation about your supposed instability, every plan they've made without including you. I may be 93, but I still have friends at the courthouse, Sarah. And I know what real evidence looks like versus family gossip. Hope fluttered in my chest for the first time in weeks. Would you testify? If it came to that? Honey, I'd do more than testify. I'd make sure half this town knew what really happened. Patricia forgets that I was a school principal for 30 years. I've seen real parental fitness issues, and I've seen concerned mothers being gaslit by their families. You're the latter. When I finally crept back into the house, I found Jake awake in our bedroom, holding his phone. Where were you? He asked without looking up. Getting some air. I started changing into pajamas, watching his reflection in the dresser mirror. Melissa called. She's really upset about how today ended. I'm sure she is. She wants to know if she can take Oliver to the park tomorrow. Just for an hour, while you rest. I turned around slowly. Absolutely not. Jake's face hardened. Sarah, this has to stop. You can't isolate our son from his family because of your anxiety. Jake. I kept my voice calm, clinical. I need you to listen to me very carefully. I know about the family meetings. I know about the group chat where your mother, sister, and aunt are documenting my behavior. I know they're discussing my fitness as a mother. His face went white. Sarah, you're being paranoid. I have screenshots. Timestamps. Voice recordings from tonight's call with your grandmother, who told me about what happened to cousin Michelle in 1987. I sat down on the bed, close enough to see the panic in his eyes. So here's what's going to happen. No more unsupervised visits with Oliver. No more family meetings without me. And no more discussions about my mental health unless I'm present and have agreed to them. You can't control. I can and I will. Because unlike your family, I actually understand how custody evaluations work. And Jake? I leaned closer. If you think Grandma Rose's testimony about your family's manipulation tactics won't carry weight with a judge, you've seriously underestimated your 93-year-old grandmother. The fear in Jake's eyes told me he was finally beginning to understand the game his family had been playing. And that I had no intention of losing. The next morning brought the confrontation I'd been dreading. Jake's entire family arrived at our house unannounced at 9 a.m. Patricia, Frank, Melissa, Uncle Ray, Aunt Linda, even David and Emma with their 2 kids in tow. I watched from the upstairs window as they gathered on our front lawn like some kind of intervention squad. Jake answered the door in his pajamas, and I could hear Patricia's voice carrying up the stairs. We need to talk, Jacob. As a family. I quickly called Rose, whispering into my phone while Oliver napped in his crib beside me. They're all here. This is it. I'm on my way, she said. Don't let them corner you alone, and don't sign anything. Sign anything? Sarah, honey, I made some calls last night. Patricia visited a family attorney on Friday. Just keep records of everything they say. My hand shook as I started a voice recording on my phone, then tucked it into my shirt pocket. When I came downstairs carrying Oliver, the entire family was crammed into our living room like some twisted version of a surprise party. Sarah. Patricia stood up, her smile brittle and bright. We're so glad you're here. We've been talking, and we think we have a solution that could help everyone. Linda pulled out a folder. We found a wonderful postpartum support group that meets twice a week. And there's a counselor who specializes in new mother anxiety, Dr. Rebecca Chin. She has an opening next Monday. We've already made the appointment, Melissa added, her voice syrupy with fake concern. My treat. I know how overwhelming everything must feel right now. I looked at Jake, who was staring at his hands. You made me a therapy appointment without asking? We're worried about you, dear, Frank said gently. The documentation habits, the isolation, the constant fear about Oliver's safety, these can be signs of postpartum depression. Documentation habits? I repeated. Emma shifted uncomfortably on the couch. Jake mentioned you've been keeping detailed records of interactions. That's not typically healthy behavior, Sarah. The irony was staggering. They were using my safety documentation as evidence of mental instability while building their own case against my fitness as a mother. And we've been thinking, Ray added, maybe Oliver could spend a few afternoons each week with different family members. You know, to give you time to focus on getting better. A rotation system, Patricia explained, pulling papers from Linda's folder. Melissa on Tuesdays, Linda on Thursdays, me on Saturdays. Just until you're feeling more like yourself. I stared at the printed schedule they created for my son's care. They divided up custody of Oliver like a divorced couple sharing visitation, and they expected me to be grateful for it. No, I said quietly. Sarah, Jake started. No. I stood up, holding Oliver closer. You made therapy appointments for me, created custody schedules for my baby, and discussed my mental health with attorneys, all without including me in a single conversation. Melissa's eyes filled with tears. We're just trying to help. You've been so stressed lately, and Oliver deserves. Oliver deserves what, exactly? To be cared for by people who ignore car seat safety and try to feed him inappropriate foods? There we go again, David muttered. Everything's a catastrophe. David's right, Linda said, making notes on a pad. This black and white thinking, the inability to see good intentions, these are textbook symptoms. I realized with crystal clarity that everything I said was being twisted into evidence of my instability. If I stayed calm, I was unnaturally controlled. If I got emotional, I was unstable. If I defended myself, I was defensive and paranoid. That's when I heard Rose's voice from the front hallway. Well. What have we here? Jake's grandmother stood in our doorway, still in her church clothes, surveying the room with the expression of someone who'd caught children with their hands in a cookie jar. Patricia and, she said, her voice cutting through the sudden silence, I believe we need to have a conversation about family loyalty. Rose moved into the room like a general taking command of a battlefield, her cane tapping deliberately against our hardwood floor. Every person on the couch shifted uncomfortably as she surveyed the scene, the intervention squad, the printed custody schedule still clutched in Patricia's hands, Jake cowering in the corner like a scolded teenager. Grandma Rose, Patricia started, her voice artificially bright, we weren't expecting. I'm sure you weren't. Rose settled into Jake's armchair with practiced authority, fixing each family member with a stare that could have stripped paint. Though I find it fascinating that a family meeting about my great-grandson's welfare somehow didn't warrant including me. Frank cleared his throat. Mom, we thought you might find this situation upsetting. Upsetting? Rose's eyebrows shot up. Frank, honey, I raised 6 children in an era when car seats were optional and baby formula came with instructions to add corn syrup. What I find upsetting is watching my family gaslight a new mother for practicing evidence-based parenting. Linda's pen stopped moving across her notepad. Evidence-based? Oh yes, Linda. I spent yesterday afternoon at the library. Remarkable what you can learn about modern infant safety guidelines when you actually bother to research them. Rose pulled a folder from her purse, much thicker than the one Patricia had brought. For instance, did you know that rear-facing car seats reduce the risk of death by 71% for infants under age 2? Or that introducing solid foods before 4 months increases the risk of allergies and digestive issues? Melissa's face flushed red. I never gave him solid foods. A chunk of banana isn't solid? Rose's voice could have frozen the Arctic. What about that lovely apple slice she tried to share with him 2 weeks ago? The room fell silent except for Oliver's soft breathing against my chest. I stared at Rose in amazement. She'd been documenting everything too, but with a credibility that came from 9 decades of child-rearing experience. The point is, Patricia said, her composure cracking slightly, Sarah's become obsessive about every tiny detail. It's not healthy for her or for Oliver. Obsessive. Rose rolled the word around like a bad taste. Patricia, I seem to recall you being quite obsessive when Jake was born. Sterilizing bottles 3 times, weighing dirty diapers, calling the pediatrician about every sniffle. Jake's head snapped up. Mom did that? Your mother called Dr. Morrison so often that first month, he started billing her for phone consultations. Rose's smile was sharp. But I suppose that was normal new mother concern when it was my daughter-in-law? Emma shifted on the couch, bouncing her toddler on her knee. That's different, though. Sarah's keeping actual written records. Smart girl, Rose interrupted. Wish I thought of that when your husband was trying to feed 3-week-old David ice cream because babies like sweet things. David's face went crimson. Grandma, I was 7. And your mother documented that incident for months afterward, brought it up at every family gathering as an example of why children shouldn't handle babies unsupervised. Rose leaned forward, her gaze fixed on Patricia. Funny how family memory gets selective, isn't it? Patricia's hands trembled slightly as she set down the custody schedule. This isn't about the past. Isn't it? Rose opened her folder, pulling out several sheets of paper. Because I've been making some calls, Patricia. To Judge Morrison, yes, Dr. Morrison's daughter who handles family court cases now. Lovely girl, remembers me from her childhood visits to her father's office. The blood drained from Patricia's face. What does that have to do with? Everything. You see, I mentioned your visit to Attorney Williams last Friday, and Judge Morrison found it very interesting that you were seeking advice about protective custody options for at-risk infants without any documented evidence of actual risk. Rose's smile was predatory. She asked me to pass along a message. Frivolous custody challenges based on family disputes rather than legitimate safety concerns tend to backfire spectacularly in her courtroom. Linda's notepad slipped from her hands. Uncle Ray suddenly found the ceiling fascinating. Even David and Emma were gathering their children's toys with newfound urgency. Jake finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Mom, you talked to a lawyer about taking Oliver? Patricia's carefully constructed facade crumbled completely. Jacob, we're worried about Sarah's mental state. The documentation, the isolation, the constant criticism of people who love Oliver. The protection of her infant son, Rose corrected coldly. From people who think their good intentions matter more than his safety. I watched Jake's face cycle through confusion, realization, and something that looked like horror as the pieces finally clicked into place. His family hadn't just been worried about my mental health, they'd been actively building a legal case to remove Oliver from my care. I said quietly, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Everyone except Rose and Jake should leave now. The exodus was swift and uncomfortable, full of muttered protests and wounded expressions. Patricia paused at the front door, turning back with tears in her eyes. Sarah, we really were just trying to help. Rose stood up, leaning heavily on her cane. Patricia, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. But the road to destroying families? That's paved with the kind of help nobody asked for. As the door closed behind them, I realized the war wasn't over, it had just begun in earnest. The silence that followed was deafening. Jake stood frozen in our living room, staring at the closed door like he couldn't quite process what had just happened. Rose remained in the armchair, her folder still open on her lap, while I swayed gently with Oliver, trying to calm my racing heart. Jake, I said softly, we need to talk. He turned to look at me, and for the first time in weeks, I saw my husband instead of Melissa's defensive brother. His face was pale, his eyes wide with something between shock and shame. They really talked to a lawyer, he asked, his voice cracking. Rose answered before I could. Friday afternoon, 2:30 p.m. appointment with Thomas Williams. Patricia asked about emergency custody options for mentally unstable mothers and what kind of evidence would be required. Jake sank onto the couch, head in his hands. Jesus. Sarah, I had no idea they were planning anything like that. But you knew about the meetings, I said, not accusingly, just stating fact. You knew they were documenting my behavior. I thought. He looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. I thought they were genuinely worried. Mom kept saying you seemed overwhelmed, that maybe you needed support, and I let them convince me that your safety concerns were anxiety symptoms. Rose closed her folder with a sharp snap. Jacob, your wife has been protecting your son from genuinely dangerous situations while your family gaslit her into thinking she was mentally unstable. What does that tell you about who you should trust? I'm so sorry, Jake whispered, and I could see he meant it. Sarah, I'm so fucking sorry. I should have listened to you from the beginning. Oliver stirred in my arms, making soft cooing sounds. I looked down at his perfect little face, then back at my husband. Jake, I need to know, are you with me on this? Really with me? Because if they try to pursue legal action, I need to know you'll stand with me, not in the middle. Yes. His answer was immediate and firm. Yes, absolutely. Whatever it takes to protect Oliver and make this right with you. Rose stood up slowly, gathering her things. Good. Because this isn't over, you know. Patricia doesn't like losing, and she's going to see today as a humiliation rather than a wake-up call. My stomach dropped. What do you think she'll do? Double down. She'll try to find evidence that supports her narrative, maybe contact Oliver's pediatrician asking about concerning maternal behaviors, or reach out to your friends claiming family worry. Rose fixed Jake with a stern look. She might even pressure you to secretly document Sarah's daily routines, claim it's for everyone's good. Jake's face hardened. That won't happen. Make sure it doesn't. And Jacob? Rose paused at the door. Change your locks. Today. Patricia's had a spare key for years, and after this morning, I wouldn't put it past her to stage some kind of welfare check when you're both out. After Rose left, Jake and I sat in our living room, Oliver sleeping peacefully between us. The morning's confrontation felt surreal, like something that had happened to someone else's family. I need to call Dr. Peterson, I said, thinking of Oliver's pediatrician. Give him a heads up that your family might contact him with concerns about my mental state. Jake nodded. Good idea. And Sarah? I want to see your documentation. All of it. I need to understand exactly what's been happening while I had my head in the sand. I pulled out my phone, scrolling to the first entry. Jake, some of this is going to be hard to hear. About Melissa, about your family's response, about my response, he finished quietly. I know. But I need to hear it all. As I began reading the entries aloud, I realized we'd reached a turning point. The question now was whether we could rebuild our marriage and protect our son before Patricia's next move. Because Rose was right, this was far from over. The pediatrician's office called the next morning. Mrs. Henderson? Dr. Peterson's nurse sounded uncomfortable. We had some unusual calls yesterday that we need to discuss with you. Could you come in today? My blood turned to ice. What kind of calls? It's better if we discuss this in person. Can you be here at 2 o'clock? Jake took the afternoon off work, and we sat in Dr. Peterson's office while Oliver dozed in his carrier. The pediatrician looked genuinely troubled as he pulled out a notepad. Sarah, I received 3 separate phone calls yesterday expressing concern about your mental state and Oliver's well-being, he said carefully. One from Patricia Henderson, one from someone identifying herself as Linda Martinez, and one from Melissa Henderson. What exactly did they say? Jake asked, his voice tight. Dr. Peterson consulted his notes. Patricia claimed you'd been exhibiting obsessive behaviors around Oliver's care, refusing to let family members help, and keeping disturbing written records of normal interactions. Linda mentioned something about you isolating Oliver from his extended family and becoming increasingly paranoid about routine childcare activities. My hands clenched in my lap. And Melissa? Melissa was the most specific. She claimed you've been having emotional outbursts when she tries to help with Oliver, that you've accused her of trying to harm the baby during normal activities like feeding and bathing. He looked up from his notes. She also mentioned that you've been secretly recording family conversations. Jake's jaw tightened. That's not what. I know, Dr. Peterson interrupted gently. Because I've been Oliver's pediatrician for 3 months, and I've observed your interactions extensively, Sarah. What they're describing doesn't match anything I've witnessed. Relief flooded through me. So you don't think I think you're one of the most attentive, well-informed mothers I've worked with. Your questions are always appropriate, your concerns are evidence-based, and Oliver is thriving under your care. He closed the notepad. But I need you to know that Patricia specifically asked me to document these phone calls and requested copies of Oliver's medical records. She wants his medical records? I asked. She claimed she might need them for protective proceedings. I declined, of course, but the request itself is concerning. Jake leaned forward. Dr. Peterson, what would you tell a judge if this ended up in family court? I'd testify that Oliver receives excellent medical care, that his mother follows all medical recommendations, and that there's no evidence whatsoever of neglect or abuse. In fact, Sarah's attention to safety guidelines is exemplary. He paused. But I'd also have to mention these phone calls as evidence of family conflict that could impact Oliver's well-being. We left the appointment with a sick feeling in my stomach. Patricia was being more strategic than I'd realized, trying to create an official paper trail of concerned family members reporting my instability to medical professionals. That evening, Jake's phone rang. Patricia's name flashed on the screen. Put it on speaker, I whispered. Jacob, honey, I hope you're not upset about yesterday. Patricia's voice filled our kitchen. We're all just so worried about Sarah and the baby. Mom, you called Oliver's doctor behind our backs, Jake said flatly. Only because you're too close to see what's happening. Sarah's becoming more isolated every day, more suspicious of people who love Oliver. That's not healthy for any of you. I grabbed Jake's phone. Patricia, this is Sarah. I know you spoke to a lawyer last Friday about custody options. The silence stretched for several heartbeats. I don't know what Rose told you, but she told me the truth. That you're building a case to take my son away based on your disagreement with evidence-based parenting practices. Sarah, dear, you're being paranoid again. We would never. You documented my concerning behaviors with 3 different family members, made unauthorized calls to my son's pediatrician, and researched emergency custody procedures. What would you call that? Another pause. Then Patricia's voice returned, colder now. I'd call it grandparents who love their grandson enough to protect him from a mother who's clearly struggling. The line went dead. Jake stared at his phone. She's not backing down. No, I agreed, my mind already racing. She's escalating. And we need to be ready for whatever comes next. Because I had a terrible feeling this was just the beginning. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, Melissa herself. 3 days after Patricia's threatening phone call, I was folding laundry in Oliver's nursery when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Asterisk, this is Emma, David's wife. Can we meet for coffee? There's something you need to know about what's been happening. Alone, don't tell Jake yet, asterisk. My hands trembled as I typed back, when and where? Asterisk, Starbucks on Maple Street. 1 hour. I'll be in the back corner booth, asterisk. I found Emma already waiting, nervously shredding a napkin. She looked up when I approached, her face pale and drawn. Thank you for coming, she said quietly. I wasn't sure you would after everything. I slid into the booth across from her, Oliver's carrier beside me. What do you need to tell me? Emma glanced around the coffee shop, then leaned forward. Sarah, I need you to know that David and I never agreed to what Patricia's been planning. We only went along with the meetings because she said it was about getting you help, not the other thing. What other thing? The custody petition. Emma's voice dropped to a whisper. Patricia filed preliminary paperwork yesterday. She's claiming you're an unfit mother experiencing postpartum psychosis. The world tilted sideways. She actually filed? Emergency temporary custody hearing, scheduled for next Tuesday at 2 p.m. She's listed herself and Frank as the petitioning parties, requesting immediate placement of Oliver in their care pending psychological evaluation of you. My coffee cup shook in my hands. How do you know all this? Emma pulled out her phone, scrolling to a screenshot. Because Melissa sent this to the family group chat last night, bragging about how quickly things were moving. Look at the timestamp. The image showed Patricia's filing confirmation from the county courthouse website. Case hashtag 2024 FC 1847, Henderson vs. Henderson emergency custody petition, filed March 26, 2024 at 4:23 p.m. Oh God, I whispered. That's why she's been documenting everything. Why she called Dr. Peterson. It gets worse. Emma showed me another screenshot. Melissa's been keeping a daily log of your incidents for 3 weeks. Look at some of these entries. I read with growing horror. Asterisk March 15th, Sarah became hysterical when I tried to help feed Oliver. Accused me of trying to poison him with water. Extreme overreaction to normal childcare asterisk. Asterisk March 18th, found Sarah obsessively documenting our conversation on her phone. When confronted, became defensive and paranoid. Possible recording without consent asterisk. Asterisk March 21st, Sarah physically grabbed Oliver away from me during routine diaper change. Claimed I was doing it wrong, despite my childcare experience. Controlling and unstable behavior asterisk. None of that is what actually happened, I said, my voice shaking. I know. That's why I'm here. Emma leaned closer. Sarah, Melissa showed me her evidence folder yesterday. Photos of you looking tired, recordings of you correcting her childcare methods, even a video of you documenting something on your phone after she left your house. She's been recording me? 4 weeks. Patricia coached her on what to capture, anything that could be framed as obsessive, controlling, or mentally unstable. Emma's eyes filled with tears. But here's the thing. I was there Tuesday when she showed Patricia the latest footage. What footage? Emma hesitated, then pulled up another file on her phone. This is from yesterday when she stopped by your house. She was wearing a hidden camera. She hit play, and I watched grainy video of myself answering our front door with Oliver in my arms. Melissa's voice came through clearly. Hi Sarah. I brought some new toys for Oliver. On the video, I looked exhausted, my hair unwashed, speaking in a flat, tired voice. Melissa, I told you yesterday that I need advance notice before visits. I just wanted to surprise my nephew with some presents. Video me sighed heavily. The toys need to be age appropriate. Last time you brought things that weren't safe for a 3-month-old. There we go again with a safety paranoia. I watched myself close the door firmly. Not today, Melissa. Please call first next time. The video ended with Melissa's whispered commentary. See how she's isolating Oliver? Won't even let family bring gifts. This is getting worse. Emma, I said slowly, this video actually makes me look reasonable. Tired, but reasonable. I know. But Patricia's lawyer thinks the judge will see hostile rejection of family support and controlling behavior around the infant. Emma grabbed my hand across the table. Sarah, you need to get your own attorney. Today. Because they're planning to serve you with papers tomorrow morning, right before the hearing. My phone was already in my hand, dialing Rose's number with shaking fingers. As it rang, Emma added one more devastating detail. And Sarah? Jake doesn't know about any of this yet. Patricia told Melissa to wait until after the papers were served to tell him, so he couldn't warn you or help you prepare. Rose answered on the second ring, and I could barely get the words out. They filed for emergency custody. The hearing's Tuesday. I'll pick you up in 20 minutes, Rose said grimly. We're going to see Judge Morrison immediately. As I hung up, Oliver stirred in his carrier, his perfect little face peaceful and unaware that his entire world was about to explode. The real war was finally beginning. Judge Morrison's emergency session that afternoon felt like stepping into a courtroom drama, except the stakes were my son's life. Rose sat beside me at the plaintiff's table while Patricia's lawyer, Thomas Williams, shuffled papers nervously across from us. Jake had arrived 20 minutes earlier, his face a mask of betrayal and rage after learning about his mother's secret filing. Your Honor, Judge Morrison said, reviewing the emergency petition, this appears to be a family dispute that's escalated beyond reason. Mrs. Henderson, she looked at Patricia, you're claiming emergency circumstances warrant removing an infant from his mother's care. Please present your evidence. Williams stood, adjusting his tie. Your Honor, we have documented evidence of the respondent's deteriorating mental state, including obsessive documentation of normal family interactions, paranoid accusations against loving relatives, and isolation of the infant from extended family support. He handed over Melissa's folder, 3 weeks of carefully curated evidence designed to paint me as unhinged. Judge Morrison flipped through it, her expression unreadable. I see logs of safety corrections, complaints about unsupervised visits, and what appears to be a grandmother concerned about car seat installation. She looked up sharply. Mr. Williams, is proper car seat usage now considered obsessive behavior? Your Honor, it's the pattern of. Ms. Henderson, Judge Morrison turned to me. I understand you've been documenting safety concerns. May I see your records? With trembling hands, I passed over my phone, open to the detailed log I'd been keeping. Judge Morrison read silently for several minutes, occasionally raising her eyebrows. Mrs. Patricia Henderson, she said finally, her voice cutting through the courtroom, according to these entries, your daughter attempted to feed a 3-month-old infant solid food, transported him in an improperly secured car seat, and gave him a bath without parental consent using inappropriate soap. Is this accurate? Patricia's lawyer whispered frantically in her ear before she answered, Your Honor, those are normal grandparent activities that Sarah has blown out of proportion due to her postpartum anxiety. Normal? Judge Morrison's voice rose slightly. Mr. Williams, I have grandchildren. There is nothing normal about giving solid food to a 3-month-old or bathing an infant without parental permission. She turned to Jake. Mr. Henderson, as the father, what is your position on this custody petition? Jake stood, his voice clear and firm. Your Honor, I completely oppose this petition. My wife has been protecting our son from genuinely dangerous situations while my family systematically gaslit her into believing she was mentally unstable. I should have supported her from the beginning. Judge Morrison nodded, then addressed Rose. Mrs. Rose Henderson, you requested to speak? Rose stood with dignity, her cane steady in her weathered hands. Your Honor, I'm 93 years old. I've raised 6 children and helped with 14 grandchildren. What Sarah has been documenting isn't paranoia, it's evidence-based parenting in the face of family members who think good intentions excuse dangerous behavior. She paused, fixing Patricia with a steel gaze. My daughter-in-law attempted the same manipulation in 1987 with another family member. It nearly destroyed that mother and child relationship. I won't let it happen again. Judge Morrison closed both folders with a sharp snap. Petition denied. Mrs. Patricia Henderson, filing frivolous emergency custody claims wastes court resources and traumatizes families. Any future filings regarding this infant will require substantial evidence of actual endangerment, not family disagreements about parenting methods. She turned to me, her expression softening slightly. Miss Sarah Henderson, continue documenting any genuine safety concerns. You appear to be an exemplary mother protecting her child appropriately. As the gavel fell, I felt Oliver stir against my chest and realized the nightmare was finally over. Patricia's custody grab had backfired completely, exposing her manipulation to the one person whose opinion truly mattered, a family court judge who'd seen real abuse cases and knew the difference between protective parenting and mental instability. The real victory wasn't just keeping Oliver safe. It was Jake finally seeing his family clearly, and me learning to trust my instincts as a mother. Sometimes the most dangerous threats to our children come wrapped in good intentions and family loyalty. But a mother's job isn't to keep peace, it's to keep her babies safe, no matter who gets offended.